So there's a huge difference between an inexperienced, young, aspiring CEO and a seasoned, experienced CEO. And the main difference is sometimes you can see in the actual character. The young, aspiring CEO is chasing the new opportunities, is going after the market, he is chasing the people, he's chasing the new talent inside of the business, he's chasing the tactics, he's chasing the brand new strategy, the next funnel strategy that will unlock the next growth in the business. But on the other side, the seasoned CEO wants more leverage. He wants stronger systems. He wants more clarity inside the business to understand what needs to be installed inside of the business so the business can be durable for the next 100 years. And that's the big difference that I see a lot of new CEOs, a lot of new entrepreneurs and new founders overlook. They more focusing on today's tactics, on today's strategy, on today's employees, on today's activities, on today's tasks. Where as a seasoned CEO, he's planning for the next 100 years. Because eventually we have to understand a couple things here. If you're planning for the next 100 years, maybe your business is not going to grow for the next 100 years. However, the systems will allow your business to be more durable than optimizing for the next 3 to 5 years. And so the biggest thing that I see with a lot of younger CEOs, inexperienced aspiring CEOs, is that they are optimizing their entire strategy for the next 3 to 4 years. Because we have here this paradigm of let's plan for the long term. And somebody says, what's your long-term goal for the next 3 to 5 years? Personally, I don't believe that the 3 to 5 years is a long-term thinking. I think that that's short-term thinking. Because eventually, you have to ask yourself, we are not going to live only for 3 to 5 years. We're going to be living more than 3 to 5 years. Some of us are going to go all the way to the age of 60, some of us 70, some of us 80, some of us 90, depending on your personal life, depending on your lifestyle, depending on who you are as a person, depending on who you are as an operator. So the most important thing that we have to understand here, the seasoned CEO has horizon thinking. And the other CEO, which is the aspiring new CEO, wannabe CEO as I call them, he's thinking in the short term. Let's grow quickly the company, let's get new employees, let's get new talent inside, let's chase the new tactics, let me look at the new strategy, let me get that new webinar in there, let me get the new things. And this is what is known the following the golden object. Following the golden fish. You're following the golden fish. You are trying to catch the golden fish to get your 3 wishes without really understanding how to actually maneuver the storms, how to maneuver the sea, how to maneuver each different territory that you haven't experienced. And that's where the new CEO is completely different from the seasoned CEO. The seasoned CEO is more interested into understanding how we can build the foundation right. What systems do we need to have in order for the business to be durable for the next 50 to 100 years? Okay? And that's why some of the biggest businesses like JP Morgan, Citibank, you have Wells Fargo, you have Amazon, you have Tesla, you have all the other businesses that have stood the time. They have stood the time of test. They have stood the time of turbulence. They have stood the time of storms. Because those CEOs were not adapting to the short-term mind. They were not adapting to the short-term tactics. They were not adapting to the yesterday's ad strategy. They were adapting of understanding what type of architecture needs to be actually built so the business can survive for the next 100 years. And after the 100 years, we can then adjust. Okay? Because we also have to not only look at the market itself, we have to look at the cycles. We have to look at the seasons. We have to look at much more than just what we see on the surface level. And I feel personally, I will share with you just a couple ways that I feel there's a huge difference between aspiring CEO and an experienced CEO. But when it comes down to the core of the difference, I feel the main difference is that a new aspiring CEO is always looking on the surface. But whereas a seasoned CEO is more looking in the depth. He's more trying to understand the depth of things, not just surface things. So it's like instead of we reacting to the symptoms, we try to really understand what are the core problems that actually caused for symptoms to come up as signals. Okay, so here's a couple ways. So seasoned CEOs versus aspiring CEOs. Okay, I have written some few things down on my computer. I'm just going to read them out for you. We're going to go into all context, and I'm going to make this as educational as possible. So Number one is about problems. Aspiring CEOs, they like to solve problems because they understand that business is all about solving problems. Once we solve problems, there's new problems. I'm a problem solver, right? And because we also have here probably in the market, we have also have here something as, oh, the bigger problems we solve, the bigger money we get paid. And so like sometimes this paradigm, it's like, okay, so in the business, I need to keep solving problems. The more problems I solve in the business, the more valuable the business will be because we are solving more problems. Whereas the seasoned CEO completely thinks different. He likes to find the systems producing the problems and focus not only on problem solving, but focus on how these problems can never occur in the business or have less chance or less probabilities of happening again in the business. So that's the main difference. So sometimes you may look at it and say, hey, we have a symptom of a problem, and a brand new aspiring CEO goes solve that problem, but a seasoned CEO asks, where did that actual problem come from? What caused the problem to happen? What system was not dialed in that should be dialed in that made this problem to occur? What was the root cause of this problem happening? And then the seasoned CEO is looking at actual operating systems rather than looking at the symptoms and trying to just solve the symptoms. Next one is opportunities. Aspiring CEO, he would usually chase opportunities, where a seasoned CEO would usually protect focused and would say more oftentimes no to opportunities because he would understand the downside of pursuing an opportunity and not pursuing an opportunity. So there's a downside with going after an opportunity and a downside with not going after opportunity. So you need to look at a couple causes. The first cause is if we do go after this opportunity, what is the upside? What do we achieve if we do go after this opportunity? What happens if we don't achieve it? What do we have to achieve this opportunity, to pursue this opportunity? Why do you believe this is a good opportunity? They have a calculation risk portfolio before they go after every opportunity. Where aspiring new CEO, he sees an opportunity, he says, hey, we need to pursue the opportunity without really calculating what is the risk? What happens if we do achieve this opportunity? And what happens if we don't achieve this opportunity? What happens if there's other opportunities that we should be pursuing, okay, that would be much more leverage to the business or would pay out more for the business? What are those opportunities that we are not currently seeing? Why is this the opportunity that we should be pursuing? So there's a lot of questioning frameworks that come in with a seasoned versus unseasoned CEO. The questioning framework is more importantly kind of diagnosing the opportunity and is it even worth to chase that specific opportunity? So aspiring CEO, when it comes to the nutshell, asks him how many opportunities can we pursue? And then he would try to pursue as much opportunities as they could. But a seasoned CEO would say which opportunity deserves actually our attention and which opportunity is actually worth our time. Because there's so much things fighting for your attention, so much opportunities that we could go pursuing. But the main thing that it comes down to is really understanding of which opportunity is really worth our time right now. Because there's so much opportunities that we could be pursuing. But which of all of those opportunities is the one that we should be pursuing? And the opportunities that we should not be pursuing. The next one is actual people, right? Aspiring CEOs, they want great employees. They want, hey, all about A players, we need to get only A players. Whereas a seasoned CEO, and this is the big key difference, builds an organization that produces great performance, right? And let me give you a good example here. I'm gonna give you an example of one of my businesses before that I started. I was before also just about, hey, we need A players. I need to have great team players. I need to get good people in the business. And without realizing that I need to produce a great organizational performance inside of my business. What does that look like? That looks that I don't hire people just to place them inside of my chaos. I actually hire them to be placed in a system. And the system is already producing an outcome that I want. And the better player I can get there, the better outcome I can get. However, the main key nominator that produces the outcome that I want is the system, not the person. And so I can even get an average performer inside a very well-designed, very well-performing system, and I will still get incredible results. So when we get to the core of the actual people placement inside of your business, it comes down to understanding that we're not trying to place them in the chaos. We're not trying to hire just because we are desperate to have somebody in the business that can help us. The seasoned CEO understands that I am placing people in a system, but the system is already designed to produce an outcome. And the better person I can place in that system, the better results I will get. But then again, it comes down to asking a couple questions before we are hiring. Questions like, how long does it really take for somebody to be hired? How good of a quality we can get in that time? And how good of an employee we can actually place in our system? How long does it take to actually train that person into producing the results that we want? How we can increase their performance, and how we can mature them into that system. That's the main question, because you don't want to build an organization on your people, because that means once people leave, you have no organization. You want to build systems in organization and place people into those systems that produce outcomes. The next one is decisions. Aspiring CEO wants to make every important decision because for him, he wants to be the main key operator inside of the business that makes most of the decisions. A seasoned CEO builds a decision-making system so the company doesn't depend on him. That's the main difference here, is that he believes that even when a really important decision has to be made in the business, obviously there's going to be categories of decisions that a CEO will make compared to what a team can make. But when a decision-making comes to play, a seasoned CEO has built a decision-making system of how exactly we make decisions, how we evaluate decisions, how we understand each decision, what do we not see about the decision that we are making. And in that way, you have criteria, you have a system in where you make the decisions. Where on the other hand, the aspiring new inexperienced CEO is mostly focusing on making all the decisions. But a seasoned CEO trusts that even when he's not there, the team will make the best possible decision. The next one is growth. Aspiring CEO asks, how do we grow faster? And what do we need to get? Do we need to get more marketing? Do we need to get more people? Do we need to spend more on ads? What exactly do we need to do to grow faster? Where a seasoned CEO asks a different question. What breaks if we grow faster? Because you have to understand that when you grow, something eventually will also have to give. And that's the same analogy we can use in the gym. Let's say you are only bench pressing 50 kg. You come to the gym and somebody wants to add 50 kg. Now you fail with it. Why did you fail? It wasn't that the weight was too heavy. It was that your body wasn't ready for that type of performance. Your shoulders maybe were not there yet. Your biceps, your triceps were maybe not there. Your posture was maybe not there. And the same with the business. We can, yes, get more clients, but the question becomes, what happens with fulfillment? Can the fulfillment carry that many clients? What is the capacity? What is the capability? What does our management look like? What does our leadership look like? So there's always the second consequence question comes in play. It's not the first consequence of just growing the business. It's the second consequence of like, what happens after that happens? And the farther that consequence can be stretched out, the better decisions you can make. Because it doesn't come only like, hey, let's just put most of our budget allocation into this. It becomes of a question, is there a better place to allocate our budget currently? What happens if we allocate the budget there? What happens with all the other systems? And so the question becomes of what will give next? And this is where a seasoned, experienced CEO builds the growth of asking the question, what is the second consequence result that will happen once the first consequence result happens? What is the third consequence result that will happen after the first consequence result happens? That's the main difference between a seasoned CEO and a brand new spanking CEO that doesn't have that experience. Next one is success. Aspiring CEO wants to look successful. A seasoned CEO builds something that works without them. So a brand new CEO will always try to look successful. I need to look successful. I need to make the company look successful. I need to make my employees look successful. I just want to look successful here. Where a seasoned CEO asks himself, how can I build a company in a way that doesn't actually require me to be there? And this is why I like to ask the question, what happens inside of your business when you're not there for 90 days? And for most brand new CEOs, it's like, well, things start to slow down and eventually comes to the point where my team doesn't know what to do. And so that means you have made yourself to look successful, but your team are not capable to perform without you being inside of the company. And that's a big key denominator when it comes to mature business in an immature business, because the mature business is being led by mature seasoned CEO, and an immature business is being led by immature, unexperienced, spanking new, aspiring CEO. That's the main difference here, because one business can survive throughout 90 days, not CEO being there, another one cannot. So the young CEO wants to move fast. And the seasoned CEO wants to move correctly. He wants to have durability. He wants to have clarity. He wants to have flexibility. He wants to have understanding before each of these decisions are made. So the inexperienced CEO says, let's just try things out. Where a seasoned CEO asks, well, what happens if this is wrong? What goes wrong? Again, it comes to asking the question of what is the consequence of being right and being wrong? Is being right less risky than being wrong? Because let's say if you are right, let's say there's not a lot of risk happening. But let's say if you're wrong, then that's like 100% irreversible decision you have made. And that's a bad decision to be made. So it's irreversible versus reversible decision making. So let's say you make something, it's easy to reverse. If you make a decision, you're 100% wrong, it's really irreversible, it becomes a really risky decision to make. So you have to really weigh each decisions you are making. You have to weigh them and understand what are the consequences of being right and wrong. If we are right, how much risk are we actually taking to be right? If we are wrong, how much risk are we carrying to be wrong? These are really important questions to ask. So a young CEO would always say the salesperson isn't performing, let's replace them, right? So this comes down to the system thinking. A seasoned CEO say, what does this role repeatedly, why this role specifically is producing underperformance? Because eventually we have to come to understanding the seasoned CEO understands the entire architecture of the business. He understands the underlying above just the outcome itself. Where unexperienced CEO would look at the symptoms, he would look at only the surface type of outcomes. Where a deeper seasoned CEO would look at the deeper architecture. He would say, well, why is that system underperforming? Why is it specifically that? Because it could be that, yes, the closer maybe could be the wrong person and you need to replace the person, but the question comes down to understanding, is the system designed for them to perform well? Has the training succeeded? Has the process succeeded? Has the ramp-up period succeeded? And if that all checks out, then it's the person that is the actual bottleneck. But if it's the system, we don't replace the person. We need to redesign, re-engineer the entire system. And that's the big difference between system thinking CEOs and symptom thinking CEOs. So I want to leave you with this. The aspiring CEO wants to become more important to the business, whereas the seasoned CEO wants to make the business less dependent on them. And that is the main difference when it comes to a seasoned CEO and a wannabe, inexperienced, immature, aspiring, spanking new CEO. If you really enjoyed this video, smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, also get the bell notification because I release content like this every single week. I don't want you to miss it. If there's anything you want to discuss in the comment section, comment down below. Comment down below your thoughts on this video and I will do my best to answer.